chaos.
It's a beautiful mind, Mark.
It's a mind that is like the landscape of Fury Road. Anyway, complete with War Boys and other things. And hello everyone, and welcome to the spoiler room. We appreciate you listening in, tuning in as we close out putting on the Ritz month here with like we had a good run. We had a good run, but tonight you'll definitely want to pull up a chair and crack open your favorite drink or three as we talk about 1989 Communion, starring Christopher Walken. And tonight with me is the crew member who may not keep coming back for more after this one. It is none other than my right hand man, Mr. Ian Simmons. How are you doing, Ian?
To quote Mr. Walken from this movie, I have no idea why I'm here, what I'm doing, talking to you. Mark, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for communion.
I wasn't ready for communion. What are you talking about?
This movie took like 20 minutes longer than it should have because I kept pausing to type into my phone this badass fucking weird dialogue. For example, sit up and talk to me. I'd rather be dead. It's crazy. Women. That's one line of dialogue. That's not like from different scenes.
That's all one. Yeah, communion. I messaged you. I remember messaging you after while I was watching it because you luckily had like an anniversary and stuff, and your wife. Oh no, your wife wanted to watch something. That's right. This was after your anniversary. Which happy anniversary, by the way.
Well, thank you.
But and happy 1000th episode. Before we get into this, we'll talk about some good stuff here real quick, folks. If you haven't hopped over yet, I'm going to shill it now, though there'll be more shilling later. Head over to Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. Check out Ian's 1000th episode with no cowbell, but where we talked Pulp Fiction. That was a lot of fun. So
technically 1001 was live yesterday with our Academia Giallo of Amsterdam. Mark, have you ever seen Amsterdam? Did I ask you about this yet?
Amsterdam? No, I have not seen Amsterdam. But
I don't want to take over the show, but I will say you need to watch Amsterdam. 1989. Okay. It's a Giallo movie, kind of, but it's more of an action thriller. A guy pursuing a serial killer who's got a like a deep sea divers motif, pursuing him around the canals of Amsterdam. It's like Jean Reno from The Professional if he thought that he was Marion Cobretti from Cobra.
Okay. Yeah. I'm there for it. Yeah, I like my Giallo films, but that sounds cool. No, I haven't watched that one yet. But I will. But that's cool that you did that with your Giallo episodes. There's all kinds of episodes, folks. So yeah, shameless plug. Congratulations, Ian, for 1000th episode. You can tell we really want to talk about communion tonight.
I don't know how to talk about communion. Look, give another line. Another line. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect reaction to your asking me to do the synopsis.
Yes.
Another line from Mr. Walken. This is not good. I can't do this. Sorry.
When I'm writing, what I'm doing, it's awful.
Is you putting we should just like show our phones of our exchange from the Facebook Messenger yesterday, because I think it just sums everything up. It started off because I messaged you. I was like a few minutes into the movie, and I said, Mark, I think you might need to pay me to finish watching this movie.
Yeah, which was hilarious because great minds think alike, because I was already like 20 minutes into the film when you messaged it, and I'm like, oh boy, howdy, you have no idea yet, son. You just messaged me when you said we're 5 minutes, and I'm like, Oh, you you have not you have not even scratched the surface of what this film is. Can you try to synopsize, or I'll give it if you don't want.
I'll do it. It's
Okay.
based on the novel by Whitley Strieber,
Yeah.
who, as I mentioned to you, I'm curious to read that book now because I can't believe that this performance was adapted from the allegedly real life antics of a flesh and blood human being. But yeah, he's according to the movie, I assume the book, he's a New York writer, um, very eclectic, hep cat. He's got a wife who's he's very goofy with. He's got a son who he's very goofy with. The son is like the really precocious, like, I don't have any real friends. I just hang out with my parents' adult friends, so I talk like an adult. It's really weird. He's 6. But then they go away to upstate New York to a little cabin with some friends, and there's some weird flashing lights and some kind of nightmare scenarios and glimpses of aliens, little critters. And later, like a couple months later, I think, the day after Christmas, they're back at the cabin, and Whitley Strieber gets abducted and probed, and horrible things allegedly happen to him. And he comes back from the experience, and the movie is basically about him, his life unraveling, and coming to discover the truth of what happened. He finds a support group of people who've had similar experiences. It almost destroys his marriage. And yes, putting on the Ritz factors into this movie somehow. And
It
yeah,
does. He sings it. He hums it. He hums it. I look, I hadn't seen the film, but I saw that it was referenced and that he had a long section for when I was reading it, but I didn't want to spoil it for myself. I didn't realize that it was just, I figured he would sing it with the aliens. He does it, but he does dance with the aliens. And there's whole thing. This film is so hard to put into words, folks, and I am not blowing this out of proportion. I think Ian will concur that this movie is a fevered dream of random thoughts, and unfortunately, it has a sort of atmosphere and narrative that a number of these alien abduction films that were for a very short time popular in the late 80s, early 90s, because a lot of people were coming out with their stories of I've been abducted with aliens, were very similar. I know people who love Fire in the Sky. I hated Fire in the Sky
I've
when
never
I
seen that
saw it.
one. I never caught up with it.
I did not care for it at all. Though I was very young when I first saw it. I actually saw it in the theater, and maybe I didn't quite understand it and I have to revisit it. But for me, most of the alien abduction films where they're trying to portray the alien abduction as based off of recounts from people, I never found quite interesting. I always found were handled really too weird. I mean, there's handling weird, and then you look at Communion.
Okay, the movie suffers from the same problem as Kubrick's The Shining, which is that you've got your lead actor. In this case, it's Christopher Walken. In that case, it was Jack Nicholson. But
Yeah.
the idea is something happens to this average, ordinary guy that transforms who he is. But Christopher Walken is weird from the moment we see him. There's no like transformation. It's not like
There
I
is
got abducted
no.
by aliens and I became insane. Like, no, when they go to this cabin, the little boy goes into his room and he screams out as dad runs in. He's like, Dad, there's a spider. What does dad do? Picks up the spider and like throws it on his son. And like everybody else is in the room, like, oh, get it off, get it off. And then at the end, what does he say to his son? He's like, I'm glad this isn't my room. Like,
I know. I know. Yeah. Actually, folks, hey, if you're not part of our Patreon, you should be at least the dollar tier. Come on, you can get the conversation before the conversation. We were talking about being Gen Xers. If you want a prime example of parents of Gen Xers, Communion has that. Walken and Walken's character and his wife are like serious boomer type parents. I mean, the kid, yeah, he sat there and he goes, I'm glad this isn't my room. like the spider's still in there, and I'm just like, dude. And then like his kid is screaming and because he thought he was getting abducted or a nightmare, and he's complaining about his kid screaming. He's like, and then there's this weird thing with him and his wife where he's literally trying to look under her robe while the kid is on the couch right there for Christmas. And it's just
I understand what you're saying about the boomer parents. I didn't know anybody who was that wackadoo in terms of parentage.
no,
Um,
I did, but maybe that's because I traveled in different circles and not like you folks down south. No, just kidding.
Damn with it. I'm not wearing overalls, Mark. I have
Sorry,
straws sticking out of my teeth.
I
No,
couldn't resist. Sorry.
um, no, it's like, and that's the whole thing is like this whole relationship with the wife, Anne, I think, Anne
Yeah.
Strieber, played by Lindsay Krause, who I recognized as the scientist from Buffy the Vampire Slayer's later season. And it's weird to see her dressed as like this, late 80s, New York wife character.
Yeah.
But yeah, at one point she confronts her husband about like the problems and his hallucinations and all his weird behavior. I'm like, how could you tell the difference? Like now you've got a problem with it. The guy's a maniac. Like at another scene, when the little boy wakes up from a dream or an abduction or something, he starts screaming out, and the dad runs into the room, and he's like trying to tickle him and flip him upside down while he's crying hysterically. I'm like, no, what is this? This is not any kind of parental instinct.
Well, and then it's just it's just so weird because yeah, you had the abduction with the lights filling their apartment, their cabin, and they had some friends up there. They had a friend from Russia, friend, I think their friend, though they don't exactly talk about him like they're his friend. This couple, this couple is so problematic in so many ways. You're just like, what is with these people? I like
They cause a fire in the apartment like early on.
well the
With
duck, yeah, because he was
the
cooking
duck.
the duck, yeah.
Right, and the fire department shows up immediately as if they were just hanging out in the hallway, but they're like, "Yeah, this is like the 5th time this month or something, like, get it together." I'm like, "Yes, get it together. You should." Like, I can count on one finger the amount of times that my house is filled with smoke from something burning in the oven, but it was never that bad. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Well, and then like he put the duck in the oven because they had their friends coming over who were going to go to the cabin with them, and the duck ends up burning. She shows up. They're like, "Oh my god, there's smoke." Fire department shows up. She legitimately seems to cry to her friend, like, "Oh my goodness!" And then all of a sudden, like flip of a switch, she's fine. I'm like, man, all these people need therapy. I'm like, because Christopher Walken, he his character Whitley is a writer with a computer that gives him problems for some reason. Well, I realize now afterwards the whole problems with his technology and computers and him spacing out is because later in the film he talks about how he's actually been abducted many times. Like he was abducted possibly as a kid, and he's the chosen one to go with these aliens. But that's like random. There's so much random stuff. This episode may sound random, folks, but this movie is so random. It's like the cabin filled with lights. Their friends freak out, yet Whitley and his wife are like, "What's wrong with them? Why don't they want to stay?" And it's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, the Russian guy was, I don't know if you recognize him. He was our one-armed man from the
Yeah.
Harrison Ford
Yep.
Fugitive. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
kind of fun. Um, but there are some good parts to this movie.
Mhm.
The problem is they're disconnected from everything else. Like
Yeah.
when Anne is talking, she goes into hypnotherapy later on, and
Mhm.
she's describing what she was going through during a scene that we saw earlier on, where Whitley and the boy are being awoken by this blue light, and she's kind of sleeping through it, but we get a glimpse of her. It looked like she was waking up and kind of trying to
Mhm.
scream, but she couldn't. She talks about like what was going through her mind and the voices she was hearing about like, no, lay down, don't try and move, because the aliens were like, we're abducting your family and probing them. You just stay put, lady. That
Yeah.
was kind of eerie. And
Mhm.
I know Christopher Walken is a fine actor and he can play stuff straight. I think if he had played that instead of just being off the rails from the get go, and really we could see him start to come apart at the seams, it would have been a really cool movie. The artsy fartsy direction, though, who wrote this or who directed this? It was
Philip Mora.
Philip Mora. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, and Whitley Strieber wrote the screenplay apparently.
Yeah.
Uh, which is just so obnoxious because at the end, of course, after everything is fine, I guess, he's like, you know what? I'm unblocked. I'm gonna write a book. I'm gonna turn a story into a book. And like it's so meta. Like
Yeah.
yeah, just stop patting yourself in the back and tell a real story.
This is the guy who gave us Howling 2 and 3. Actually, he had directed Howling 3 just before Communion. That explains a lot. And then Pterodactyl Women from Beverly Hills. I've seen that, actually. So,
Of course.
I,
Of course.
I have. Let's just say he hasn't directed a lot of. I mean, he's directed other films that were released in theaters. The Howling ones were, but nothing that's really like, ooh. So that kind of explains that. I mean, this was shot on a shoestring budget. There's this lo-fi soundtrack to it, which don't get me wrong, I like synth soundtrack, but I'm like, wait, you've got some big names in this movie, and this is some serious synth soundtrack, like
Well, I mean,
low
the main
budget.
score was done by Eric Clapton. I thought that was a strange detail.
Yeah, yeah, that
Uh,
was. Well, it goes along with being a strange movie because as I messaged you, I said Christopher Walken is the most Christopher Walken has ever been in Communion. Every mannerism and trope that people joke about for Walken are in this film, from his line delivery to his just weird emotion to yeah. It's just it, everything it is so hard to put into words with this film, folks. It's a train wreck you can't take away your eyes from because in here you can see a story like you said when we get into the hypnotherapy part with his wife and then him who he can't come out of the hypnosis, so he's stuck in this weird kind of uh David Lynchian type of dream state where he's seen the aliens and their heads and he's dancing with them naked and they're looking at his junk and he's like okay with all this
Well,
and
that's later on. The earlier therapy sessions, the head shrinker is astonished because
right.
he does bring himself out of that, which
Mhm.
she wasn't expecting. I don't think was possible. And I did like the fact that it wasn't until she was kind of sure that he believed that he was abducted by these aliens that she revealed, oh, by the way, I also had a group of
Right.
people who claim to be alien abductees, and they go to that session and they're all very skeptical of him. Was what I've got all these like notes here that I'm trying to figure out. I I
It's
don't
random. It's random, just like the cowbell. Uh,
I again I don't know what the context of this is, but I start it, so I got to share. Here I am. I'm naked. I'm naked. Talking to you. Go to hell.
that is his actual dialogue. It is it is just yeah. No, you are right though, and I think one of the things is what the part that I like is that like middle like I think it's like 15 minutes like you said for I think it actually kind of gels together better when you have both him and his wife agree that yes, some shit went down that involved aliens, because she finally is convinced as well that it something happened. And when they're both on the same page, and then they start accepting it and working with the therapist and all of that, going to the group and all that, and kind of together, I liked that part. The relationship part between him and his wife is distracting and awkward. And I'm sorry, ladies, I don't care if it's 1989 or it's 2024. But you wake up in the middle of the night to go check on your son, and as you come out of his room, your husband shoots a shotgun at you, thinking you're an intruder in some kind of weird dazed state, and you don't drop his I mean, you don't, I'm gonna go live with my mom for a while type of scenario. No, we're gonna stand by our man while he's been, never mind, already acting weird.
Well,
And
that's the only thing I can think of is, well, maybe maybe that's just wit. You know, he does the gunplay every once in a while. Like, because yeah, I'm sitting there with you too. I'm like, oh, this is the part where she leaves, and then he goes deeper into his madness about being abducted by aliens. No, they just carry on. It's fine.
yeah, it's and then their relationship, then she's acting like, there's a scene where they're doing trick or treat in their apartment, in their apartment complex. Okay, and this is after his first witnessed abduction by the audience. So his kids going around, they're doing a trick or treat. There's something at this long dark hallway, it's kind of spooky. So they get down there, and this teenager in a costume pops up, and he imagines this thing as like this actual bug alien with this really wicked mouth, and he freaks and he kind of goes off on the kid. And what I found weird was how everybody seemed to immediately amp to 11. Like, okay, he got startled. That's why he yelled, because it's Halloween. Okay, calm down. But no, he's about to get in a fight with the daughter's, the young girl's dad, and the wife comes down and goes, "What the hell's wrong with you?" And he's like, "I was startled," and she's like, "I don't care," and I'm like, he was startled. Okay, like, yeah, he went off a little bit, but it was so overdone. And I think there's a lot of that in here, to where it's everybody, like, knee-jerk reactions are so over the top so instantly, it's hard to take serious because it's almost comical.
It is the Halloween scene, I think, is interesting because yeah, he snaps at her. If I was because it's a young girl in a Halloween costume,
Yeah.
if some lunatic, I don't know if they knew who he was or what, or it was just some
Yeah.
random dude at a party, some weird ass middle-aged guy starts yelling at my daughter for whatever reason in the hallway, yeah, it's going to be a problem. So I didn't have so much a problem with that, but it is just this this overall kind of heightened thing of like, he's seeing aliens. Is he actually seeing them? Like, what's going on in his head? I feel like we needed more information about his past with alien abductions earlier on, because like you were saying earlier, it makes more sense after the movie's over, like, oh, he's just been kind of messed up his whole life and it might have something to do with that. But yeah, otherwise it's just, yeah, this guy's a jerk and he's a weirdo, and somehow he got someone to marry him and give him a kid. I don't get it.
Well, but her character isn't much better. I mean, both of these, it's such a toxic relationship between these two before the abduction thing. It's such a weird, and then they had a thing to where she comes home and he's like a writer, but he's like had his problem with his computer and all of this. And so then the kid goes, "Oh, Dad, does this mean you're going to be too tired to take us to the cabin? Like, this has happened before. And I'm like, what the hell kind of family is this?
I'm telling you, it's The Shining. I mean, like, when we first meet him, he's, like, bopping around, listening to headphones with pages in his hand, like, talking to himself, and I thought he was an actor. Plus, when he sits down in his office,
Yeah,
he's got
yeah.
a video camera mounted above his giant Zenith computer, and then you see a monitor sitting next to him, so he videotapes himself while he's writing and then plays it ba I don't I've never seen that as a writerly thing. That's why I wanna read the book to find out if that's an
I
actual detail or if that's something like Christopher Walken suggests, like, "Hey, wouldn't it be great if I was videotaping myself with a camera?"
He's videotaping, yeah, while he's writing and talking, and as he talks out his story, he's writing it down in his notepad, in his robe and cowboy boots only. He's he's like wearing just his robe and cowboy boots, just random, and yeah, that was just before the trick or treat thing, and then yeah, when they get to Christmas, it's hilarious because this kid I didn't think was quite old enough to have the veil pulled back about Santa, but and I was like, wait, did they just reveal it to this kid or did he always know? Because they're talking about how the kid asked for a specific bike for Christmas while they're up at the cabin, and we see him trying to ride this thing, and uh they talk about the bike and how they got it. Santa and him and his wife are talking, and she's like, well, you bought it. I'm like, oh, so okay, so I guess the kid doesn't, we're not doing Santa at this point. He seems a little young to pull that veil back, but whatever. But it was like, okay, this is just weird. It's just the whole family dynamic part was so weird and disjointed that, like I said, it wasn't till like an hour into this hour and 45-minute film in or more when the wife finally admits, yes, something happened to all of us, when they're kind of working together as a unit, that the film kind of comes together. You're right. We get the therapist, we get the group, we get him trying to decide to actually confront the aliens possibly when he goes up there, um, there, after we get past all this relationship bullshit, which sounds bad, but it was not handled well, I don't think.
No, and, like, at the end, as you mentioned, he dresses up in a nice black suit and he bops into the kitchen. He's singing "Putting" or whatever. He's sitting
Putting on the
singing
Ritz,
"Put on
yeah.
the Ritz," and he's like, he takes his video camera and he just says to his wife, like, "Yeah, I'm going for a walk," or whatever. And I think she kind of knows that he's going to confront this thing, so he drives back to the cabin, and then like he's kind of like doing a little bopping down into the woods because the giant glowing orb is
Yeah,
there, and he goes into it, and it's the spaceship or the waiting room or whatever the hell this is, and he's like talking to himself. He's seeing images of himself as a magician, and the aliens are speaking all weird to him and revealing things or not revealing things and being very coy. And then later he wakes up in a truck by the side of the road and he drives back home. And then I don't know how long he was out or what, but I was waiting for her to give him the to read him the riot act when he came in, like,
yeah,
"Have you been gone for like 6 days or 2 hours," or whatever it was. But it's like, no, he's like, I they go and they flop on the bed and they kick up their legs and everything is just like dandy. I'm like,
and
what is this
yeah,
movie?
he explains what happened to him, and they're like, all fine, and then all of a sudden there's lights at their New York apartment, dun dun, and then they go up to the roof. And then there's like he's looking around. There's no aliens. There's just the sky and the moon. And she's like, "Oh, that's such a pretty moon." And oh, let's look at the moon. And then we cut back to them back in their apartment, and that's where he decides he's going to write his story about his experiences. And then we go to the roof again, and the film ends with them on the roof staring at the. I'm like,
In different
wait,
clothes, yeah.
I'm like, what is this movie? and and the aliens, you can't take these aliens as scary at all. At there's one creepy point. There's one creepy thing at the very beginning when he's staring at the cabinet and he knows someone's there, and you get a gray alien kind of peek out, where you just see part of the face and then sneak. I'm like, okay, that part was creepy, and then they do this fast shot to where they got the alien doing a probe on his head or whatever. This first encounter was actually kind of creepy with these aliens. After that, though, these things, you've got the Lollipop Guild aliens, which are like these 4-foot like things that look like they belong in the Star Wars cantina. They got these like lips out or these little pudgy faces, and so you get the blue, who the kid has seen them and calls them the Doctor aliens, and then you've got the long, thin ones that we're used to seeing, like in Close Encounters.
Yeah.
And
then you've also got like the weird grasshopper aliens make an appearance, like on the bus and a couple other places.
The bus. He gets on the city bus and he hallucinates that everybody's this bug alien. And it would be great, but there's no real setup for any of this. It's like you said, Walken is being Walken throughout this film, and that's where the problem with the main character is because when you're first introduced to his character, as his journey goes along, if anything, he seems to normalize more so than be as weird, because it's just like there's no arc. It's like the most arc is he's like, oh, I've been chosen, but they never take him.
Yeah, chosen for what? I mean, like the bus scene is a great example because he gets on this bus and he walks to the back. It's a crowded bus. And there's this young girl, like she's probably in her early 20s, and she's crying. And I can't remember what she said, but she like gives him a bit of a sob story, and you expect him to have some kind of a human reaction. But when he looks at her, he sees the green grasshopper alien head. And then he looks back, and everybody on the bus has a green grasshopper alien head. And so he walks back up to the front of the bus. I guess it's at the next stop. He says, it's an ambush. You people, you're in for a big surprise. And then he gets off the bus. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I try to really stay away from politics. Okay. I really try to stay away from politics, but I am sorry. There are a few times in the dialogue and the delivery and mannerisms and everything of Christopher Walken that resemble a certain individual.
Well, I mean, they're both New Yorkers. I mean,
they are both New Yorkers. I'm just saying that his manner, there's, like you said, some of his dialogue in that, like the in the bus and that, I'm like, this sounds very familiar as far as the delivery, the cadence, what was said, how odd it was said. And he has a number of those moments throughout this film to where I'm just like, I can't help but that it sounds like someone else in right now, and it's just,
he's not Voldemort. You can say it's Trump. He sounds like Trump.
Yeah, it sounds like Trump. He does. And I was trying to separate it, but they're just, like you said, there's a couple scenes where it's just like, I'm like,
no, I just got the idea. Like someone should take like a scene from a Trump rally and just like insert Walken's dialogue from this movie, like that whole thing about like, here I am, I'm naked, talking to you, go to hell.
Oh, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, I finally, looking at my notes, I realized what the context was from that scene. It's during the anal probe scene.
Yes, that's right.
And you're talking about, this is the most Walken has ever Walkened. During the bit where the blue doctor aliens come in and abduct him from his bedroom, they like pick him up from the bed and they flip him over, and he says, Well, he says, "Whoa, what are you doing?" And then they drag him out the door. And then he says, after the naked line, he says, because they're about to get out the probe. It's like this hose with this giant
Yeah,
like metal dickhead on the end of it that comes
yeah.
out of the wall. And he says, "Can we talk this over? Looks like you're gonna sing White Christmas."
I don't know if Walken read the script at all,
That's why
or
I have to read this book. Was there a line on like page 372 where Whitley Strieber says, "And then I stared at the alien, its giant black eyes. I said, 'Can we talk this
oh,
over? Are you gonna sing White Christmas?'"
you know what? I've watched too many movies. I just happened to pull up the Ibidem trivia and just scrolled, and guess what I found? And this is just coincidental.
Hmm.
Philip Mora admitted in select commentary that he granted Christopher Walken more or less complete creative freedom for his portrayal of Whitley Strieber, allowing the actor to improvise his idiosyncratic quirks and lines of dialogue freely. That explains everything. This is why you don't take the Walken off the leash. You
Now I
you
wanna know what Whitley Strieber thinks about this movie to see, if I don't know that he disowned it. He didn't, like, try and get an Alan Smithee credit or anything. His name is on the movie. Wow. Maybe he's just intimidated by Christopher Walken, like, because he was, Academy Award winner or whatever, and he was just some schlub who finally wrote a novel. I don't know.
I don't know, but just reading that, confirming what we suspected anyway, giving Walken complete freedom on this character, and that this is Walken undirected. This is just it's like no wonder this dialogue is like it is with him. And I yeah, I don't buy the relationship between him and his wife. I don't buy that this guy's a legitimate writer. Like,
Well,
you know, it's
it's not just the characterization, it's all the details in this movie are just weird. Like, it's at the very end, I think the last time we see the blue aliens,
yeah,
I noticed it's kind of a wider shot, but you can see their full bodies, and I realized that the completely, like, darkish blue/black
yeah.
outfits with those weird protruding faces you mentioned, but you look down, there's, like, these 2 white vertical stripes running down their legs, and like, "Wait a second, are the blue aliens wearing track pants?" They're all wearing track pants. And I
Well,
feel like Christopher Walken is like, "You know what would be great if they wore track pants?" Traveling the galaxy, you wanna be comfortable. Track pants.
Walken's got a wardrobe credit as well in this. Um, I the aliens too, they're weird. And I don't mean weird like alien weird. I like weird choice with them. The blue aliens, like we mentioned, look like, hairless Ewoks with extended lips. Uh, but our thin aliens aren't much more impressive. They're very, I mean, this thing's made wafer thin budget, had to be, because these skinny aliens literally look like the air guys in front of a car dealership. You know, the guys that were used in Nope. He blows the wacky whatever they're called. The those things. It,
Oh, yeah.
they literally look like that, and they dance like that though. At one point, Watkins' character, I think it's when he goes to confront him. They're dancing, and he's dancing with the little aliens, and the thin alien in the back has like these noodle arms that are moving like noodles. I mean, it's not it's just like and I'm like, am I supposed to be creeped out and scared by this alien abduction thing, or is this, killer clowns from outer space? I mean, which are scarier than these aliens, by the way, the killer clowns from outer space. I'm going to say that right now.
Yeah, they are. I mean, like the thing about the thin aliens is I think that they're well designed and they're faithful to what I've heard of, alien abduction stories. The problem is that the way that they're photographed and the way they're presented, we shouldn't see as much as we do of
Mm,
them. From what I know, they are supposed to be very kind of stolid. They don't
mhm,
have a lot of expression. They do have these giant eyes that get like little slits for mouths because they pretty much communicate psychically, right?
right.
So, but we don't really get that we see way too much of them and they have no articulation in the face, which makes sense given what they're supposed to be doing with their brains. But in this movie it just looks cheap, like, oh, you couldn't afford like some animatronic mouth or something like that, or it just, especially the last shot where the giant alien face, like it was practically paper mache, like comes out of the darkness and Walken is like fondling it with his hands. I'm like, what is this?
He fondles the alien with his head, this alien head that was, made out of a few pieces of paper. They had the intern put together, it looks like, because it's so folks, you know how I am with movies. I've been called soft with movies. I'm very forgiving with movies, but this alien close up literally looked like a kid's paper project that they just, oversaturated a bit to try to make it look alien. But even before that, even before he's making goo goo eyes with the gray alien floating head, yes, folks, uh, he does a high five, like handshake, whatever, with one of the blue doctor aliens while he was confronting him. This this confrontation scene we get in here is like 5 minutes, 6 minutes long of just him, like, it's brightly lit stuff. Usually with this stuff, it's a little darker so they can hide some of the alien effects and such and make them look creepier. No, this is in full light. That's why I think part of the aliens looks as cheap as they do. And we just go into this weird thing to where he's reliving this scene, in the past as well. We get these flashbacks, and at one point he's in a towel reading a magazine, like a sauna, and there's the head of one of the aliens sitting on a shelf next to him for no particular reason whatsoever. And I I get they were trying to put in the surrealism of what maybe the person might say they went through with the abduction. It just comes off so comical in this film. You can't be scared out. After the first cabin scene, aliens are no longer scary. Okay, Walken is scarier than the aliens at this point, because anytime after that, even when he's talking about the alien probing, it's not handled with seriousness. You've got Walken cracking jokes, and I'm like, I am I supposed to be bothered by this? Because Walken's got me snickering a bit, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel, and I think, if anything, that is the core of the problem. Is the tone of this film is so all over the place. You have no idea how you're really supposed to feel.
Yeah, I mean, like I was giving the director shit earlier, but I mean, there are parts of this I think if the script was stronger, Walken had been reined in, you could have had a pretty cool atmospheric alien abduction movie. But we don't have that, and so you pick up on the weird details, like the little boy has this really creepy clown bust statue thing in his room. I'm like, no kid wants that in their room. Um, when the first time we hear about the anal probing or whatever, it's like the last part of a conversation with his doctor, and we didn't hear the first part, and he just kind of walks in saying, "Yeah, the rectal thing." I'm like, "What?" And then when he's describing the little aliens, he says they're like big, thick kids. I don't know. Like, yeah, Walking Unleashed is not a pretty sight. I,
No, and you're again. there's blips and spurts in this film where there actually is kind of the film that you're expecting about an alien abduction, but the rest of this is so classic Walken. I mean, every Walken trope and nuance and everything that has ever been joked upon, parodied, or whatnot about Walken is contained in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, but think about all the stuff that we could have been treated to instead of
Yeah,
this. Like the whole like anal probe thing. I don't know that I've ever heard like why that. Like what are they trying to accomplish or discover? Are they taking their temperature or something like that? Imagine a movie where they get into that, like with the therapy group or something, and like, he shows up, he's like he feels violated. Like I don't know, like that therapy session, the group therapy was great because like they're talking about one lady had a daughter and then she had a daughter and like the granddaughter had an abduction experience, and then this other younger lady said, "Well, at least you have a granddaughter because I was pregnant and then I got abducted and the next morning I wasn't pregnant anymore," leading to
right,
theorize that not that the aliens killed the baby, but the baby was just like taken out of the womb and
right.
possibly sent up to the
Mhm.
stars. Like it's horrifying. That is the most interesting part of the movie because it gets into like what are these things doing with us? How do they interact with us as individuals and as a group? What do they want? But yeah, I want to know about the probe. Like, what's that all about?
Well,
But instead, we get put on the Ritz.
and what else is interesting with that, and it's implied, but again, it doesn't go anywhere, is because Whitley and his wife are actually at the therapy session because at this point his wife has also admitted, yeah, there's some shit that went down with aliens. Okay. So they're both at this meeting, but everybody's giving their confession and Whitley is like in denial, like, oh, you guys are full of like shit. And then it's implied that usually with the abductions, at least everybody else there, they only had one kind of alien. They either had the blue doctor aliens, whatever, or maybe the tall, gray aliens, basically, the look. And he doesn't admit to the fact that, oh no, I had both. I had a double whammy here. Um, and I thought that was strange. His reaction to other people admitting to the things happening, it was almost like he was disappointed that these people actually had experiences that he had in a way.
Well, I think I mean, and that's what I liked about one of the things I liked about that scene is
Right.
it's kind of like going to an Alcoholics Anonymous thing,
Mhm.
for your first meeting, or I assume I haven't done it, but like going in there and listening to all these people's sob stories and being like, I don't want to be a part of these people are freaks. I don't have a problem. I don't want to be a part of
Right.
this, even though he needs that support and needs that help on some level. I mean, that would have been interesting too. Like, yeah, he turned his back on those people and decided to write a book, which is a very solitary activity. But was that ultimately helpful to him? I don't know. Again, there's a great movie in here somewhere, and there might be a great story in the book that I'm curious about, especially knowing now that Walken essentially shit all over the production. But yeah, it's an embarrassment.
Yeah, and that therapy session, that the group therapy session is the closest you have to what you might expect for a film like this. Um, the people and their experiences and his reaction to rejecting them. I liked all of that. It's like the most serious part of it, but Walken doesn't say much during that scene, so that could be why. Uh, and his wife even doesn't like the fact that all these other people are confessing these things as well that they've gone through because it was, cementing it in reality. But it's
Yeah.
like this is the only section of this film that seems to actually handle the abduction with any type of weight.
Well, I think that's because we're getting out, we're backing away from this family and looking at other people like real people who are acting like real people. I mean, I thought it was kind of strange at the end as, Strieber and his wife were leaving, they're like, okay, we're out of here. They stopped to shake everybody's hands. I'm
Yeah.
like, and they shook their hands. I'm like, this is kind of odd. But the last guy, I don't know if his name was Roy, but when
Yeah.
he shook the guy's hand, he says, please come back.
Mhm.
Like he understood. I know this is weird and uncomfortable, but if you give it a chance, you can really help. That's all expressed in a handshake and a please come back that's practically off screen. And again, I think if this had been a real movie, we could have explored that. Like maybe Whitley and Anne, they go and talk about it and they decide to give it another shot, or they decide not to, or maybe that guy finds out who they are and reaches out to them and kind of opens things up about their experience. But no, we go back onto the spaceship and Walken talks to himself as a magician.
With dark eyeliner, and his wife is his
Pencil
assistant.
mustache. That wasn't his wife. That was
Or
another
that was
actress,
another that's right, that was another actress.
which
But
should have been his wife. I don't know why it wasn't. I'm like, what is
and
again? That's the running theme for this movie tonight, Mark. What is this movie?
I don't know, because the only part, and we go back to it, but that's the only part that has any coherency, is the therapy session. Because where I was going with it before, where it left my brain like a minute ago, I apologize to everyone, is uh the scene opens in an interesting way. And this is why we're focused on this, because out of all of this is the one thing that stays linear. It plays out like a movie. It makes you think they're taking it into another direction, but it's just this one actual good cinematic moment in the film before it goes back to Crazy Town. Um, is they open up with, he says he's a writer, and everybody in the group don't trust him. And I love that, because it was out of left field. I hadn't even thought of that angle, but here you have a bunch of people who believe wholeheartedly they've had at least one, if not more, experiences of an alien abduction. And whenever you bring that up, people chuckle, people laugh. They've had writers, they're the butt of jokes. Let's face it, oh yeah, you got abducted by aliens. But these folks truly, genuinely believe what they've gone through. So when he says he's a writer, everybody's like, oh, I don't know if I want to give my story, because I don't want to give it in front of a writer. I don't want this on the press. I don't want, and they all, until he specifies, no, I write books. And I don't think he's written a single book in his life. Uh, he's still trying, but then they seem to relax a little bit. But I just loved that moment because it was unexpected, but it made sense. And I'm like, wow, okay, that the ship is righting itself a little bit. We're following a course now, and we're following. And then why is he in a suit? Why is he whistling, putting on the Ritz? What's going? Why are they on the roof of their hotel, of their apartment building? And oh wait, there's the credits. And yeah, and that's the problem. You're right. In here somewhere, there actually is a solid movie about abduction and the impact on people's lives who either have experienced or believe they have experienced abductions. It's in here. It's just so buried under Walkenism that, and the director, you can tell the director has no control over this film. None. And you, people might say, oh, you can't tell from that. I'm like, no, you watch this movie, you tell me the director had any type of major control over this movie. Please. I'd love to hear that argument, because I don't think he did.
Seriously, like I mentioned, that first scene where we see Walken like in his kitchen or wherever he is in his study, bit bopping along with the headphones, and he's like reading pages and stuff. You think he's an actor and he's like out there on the edge. I'm like, oh, this is like a flash forward from after he's been abducted and he's acting all strange and everything. And we're gonna see how he got to be this deranged, crazed individual. But no, this is the first scene. This is the A point.
Yeah. And he's talking to himself. He's like, oh, I'll put in was it a Jewish joke, everybody, or something like that, an Arab joke or something. He's like, knock knock joke, a Jewish knock knock joke. Yeah, I'll include a Jewish knock knock joke. That'll be funny. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, what are you writing? I thought he was rehearsing. I'm the same as you. I thought he was rehearsing lines. I thought he was rehearsing lines the way he was reading this out. I'm like, you're not reading these things out like you're an actual, writer. I'm like this.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes if he was writing dialogue, then writers will read it out loud to
sure.
themselves to see if it sounds like the way people talk. But yeah, the way he kept repeating things and kind of mumbling to himself, yeah, it felt like he was trying to memorize an entire scene and like gloss over other people's parts so he could get to his own or something like that. But yeah, it just doesn't.
Well,
if if it's specific to his process, that's great. But in terms of movie language, that's not how people encounter or think about writers. You want to see him at his desk. The whole thing with the video camera. I thought, oh, maybe he's putting together an audition tape or something like that.
right.
He's building a character to send out. But no, he's just for whatever reason recording
Well,
himself writing.
well, and let's not forget the fact he has a video camera, and he decides to go to confront the aliens. He has a video camera.
Well, they collected at the door.
That's true. That's true.
They've
They
got
did
an
collect
alien
it at the
bouncer.
door. Yeah, the alien bouncer before he went into the alien discotheque with the wobbly dancing aliens. And, and yeah, but and it again, I figured when the computer problem happened and a few other things, I'm like, okay, they're kind of implying maybe he had that encounter with aliens before, but there's not really anything else that hints to that till the very end when he talks about after he talked to him. Oh yeah, they've been doing this to me for eons, since I was a little kid, and I'm the chosen one now. I'm like, oh, and the only evidence we ever had of something weird, from an evidence of alien abduction is the computer freaking out on him the one time for no apparent reason. uh you know Maybe it's implied with the duck burning too and him spacing out, but it's not handled well enough in the visual storytelling for you to get that. All you see is the star.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's also, I mean, stuff that you could go into that, like a dangling thread involving a vision he had of his son being dead.
Right.
He shows up kind of like all ashen face and kind of turns his head. He's like, "Why did you let me die, Daddy?" or something like that. I'm like, "What is that all about? I can't wait to see where this goes." It goes nowhere. And then also the whole idea of if he was abducted by aliens as a child, or they're experimenting on him, or he at least knew about them, did they do anything to him that might have affected his lineage? Like, does his son have alien DNA in him now? Is that what they're doing? Because they talk about later, he's kind of monologuing about, well, maybe this is the advanced form of human beings and they see us as larvae. And
Right.
we're like so far behind where they are that it just doesn't make sense. Maybe they're cultivating us. So yeah, is the Whitley Jr., or whatever his name is he part of a grander experiment or what?
Yeah, and they don't do a whole lot with his kid either. There's a scene where the kid is by himself during Halloween, like on a playground at some party or something, and they just come and collect the kid because he's not really doing anything or interacting. But it never goes anywhere with the kid too. And like the kid will pipe in like he's this really brilliant kid, and then he just goes away and nothing more is referenced with the kid. It's like there's a interesting angle here with the kid that's never explored, you know?
Right. I mean,
Oh,
you could, if you wanted to thread that, I'm not saying this is how it happened, but if you wanted to go with a fictitious version of events, you could say, well, maybe the kid and the dad were both kind of loners as children, and that's why the aliens chose them to
right.
experiment on, because they wouldn't draw attention. I mean, we do see in Whitley's flashback there are other kids in the background. You get the feeling that the thing appeared in the sky while they were playing in the woods at night. I don't know what the hell is going on there. But yeah, you could draw these cool connections. And even if you didn't answer anything, you could leave the audience with the impression that there was a grander plan that hadn't been revealed to the streamers, but that the aliens had, and we're kind of getting a peek into that.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential and a lot of different things you could go with it that it doesn't do. You think it's going to go there and you're like, "Oh, okay, here we go." And then no, we go back to whatever Christopher Walken was doing in this movie. And I know we kept coming back to it tonight and keep bringing it back to the Christopher, but it's true. He dominates this film. He overshadows whatever story that Whitley wrote here, gets overshadowed by just the sheer persona that is Walken. He just overtakes this film. And it's interesting because this writer, Whitley, he also wrote the screenplay to Wolfen, which in the beginning, there's a portrait of a wolf that Whitley puts up in his apartment. So that's kind of a nod to that. And I've seen Wolfen, and Wolfen's definitely interesting. Edward James Olmos is in that, and you get to see
and Gregory Hines, right?
and you get to see a
Yeah.
lot more of Edward James Olmos than you would ever expect to see in Wolfen. That was an interesting story, a little bit more coherent than this one. And then he also wrote The Hunger right after that in '83. And The Hunger is an interesting movie. I think we covered that here. I don't remember if we covered it here or not, but The Hunger is an interesting movie. Soundtrack by no, that was The Fury. I was going to say by John Williams, but John Williams, I think, did The Fury, not The Hunger. But still, The Hunger is an interesting movie. And then he's written this, and so it's not like he was an inexperienced screenplay writer. I really think this film could have used a different director.
Yeah, someone to stand up to Walken and say, you're not going to throw out the entire script. Wow.
And yeah, I mean, if people are a fan of this movie, great, but it was tough to watch. And for me, for a movie to be tough to watch, it's tough to watch because usually I'm rolling with it, and in the beginning it's kind of cute that, Christopher Walken, oh, look, here's all the stuff that we've ever heard about. Here it is right here. Okay, this is cool. And then you get 20 minutes into it going, okay, this is cool, but where's the story going? And then an hour into it, you're like, okay, we still get more Walken, and apparently his wife doesn't mind getting shot at. She stays with him, yet they do this thing too, so they don't argue in front of their kid. They go down an elevator in their apartment and argue in the elevator, argue in the lobby, resolve whatever it is. They get back in the elevator and come back up. That's how they resolve their arguments. Never mind the fact that they could go up to the roof, but they leave the kid alone.
6 years old, or however he's supposed to be. Yeah, 6 or 7. Yeah, just alone in a New York apartment. It's fine. It was the 80s.
It's the 80s. That's right. It was the 80s. So,
probably left the door unlocked and everything.
I most likely. I don't know. So we'll wrap it up here for the night, folks. But I really tried with this movie. I really, really tried. And again, there's bits and pieces that really I enjoyed. And somewhere in this, what we have, there's a story. There's a solid story about alien abduction. Maybe not to the level and the darkness that Fire in the Sky was, but there's at least something, there's something here. It just gets railroaded. It gets totally railroaded by a director who loses control of the film to his star. That's the only thing I can explain it.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. So there you have it, folks. If you have seen Communion, please leave your comments down below. Always love to hear your constructive thoughts about any of the films we covered here on the Spoiler Room. We bring you variety. And in fact, we're closing out our Puttin on the Ritz film. This was the weakest one, but there is Puttin on the Ritz sung in it by the star. So I will argue, yes, it fits within the theme. But next month, we definitely have an interesting theme with On the Lam, which is going to be a month where we're going to cover 4 movies about people who were framed for murder and are hiding from whatever government authorities looking for them, whether or not they actually did it or not. And yeah, so basically people on the run. So it's On the Lam month. We're going to be covering some interesting movies. And next week, as you mentioned, Ian, is a connection to Communion. We're going to be talking The Fugitive with Harrison Ford.
You did that on purpose, didn't you? You set this all up because
I
you
did.
knew.
I set this all. It's that's exactly what. No, that's not what. It just fell. Just a coinky dink. So,
Are we going to talk about Communion again? Because according to your
No.
synopsis, I mean, Christopher Walken murdered this movie. I think that counts.
And he's still hiding from the producers. I don't know. He won't talk to the producers at all. So yeah, look forward to that, folks. As we talk, we're going to be talking The Fugitive. We're going to be talking about what is it? Safe in Hell. We're looking at Dark City, which actually is an On the Lam film, and a movie called Nightfall from 1956. So that's the 4 movies we'll be covering next month. And now, here's where I give my wonderful and very patient co-star and right-hand man, Ian, the license to shill. So, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com and also right here on YouTube. Do roundtable reviews and interviews and all that good stuff. This Wednesday night, which is only a couple of days from now, these long weekends always mess me up. I still think it's Sunday, but we're going to be doing a roundtable review / autopsy of the new Warner Brothers movie Furiosa, which I have not seen. So I'm very curious to find my own reaction along with the reaction of my esteemed panelists. That'll be 8 p.m. Central. So swing on by if you're free and interested. And I think that's about it. Oh, I'm also here every Monday talking. Well, I think in this case, whether or not it's a real movie is debatable, but I'm here every Monday talking movies with Mark.
We're just here expanding Ian's horizons for the good or bad of it. So, but
I
next
felt like
week,
I was probed watching this movie. My God.
I was starting to wonder that myself. So, I'm like, whoa, have I been abducted and are they forcing me to watch this film? I'm not sure. Just give me the anal probe instead, please. It'll be over quicker. So there you have it, folks. Thank you so much for listening in our live crew. Our live crew, live viewers. Check it in. Thank you, Ian. And as always, folks, we'll just say good night, everyone.
Whoa.